Hey guys, okay, hopefully you can see me. There's not too much of a shadow. There we go. I'll turn around just a little bit so you can see and you're not seeing the light from the window back behind you. Okay, so in class today we talked about what is special about the month of February and that not being just Valentine's Day. So February is Black History Month, so we are taking a look at the life of Martin Luther King. And you got your packet in class. So I'm going to read this book to you. And as you listen, there will be 2 questions that you need to answer. And that will be your entrance ticket to class on Tuesday. So this book is called Martin's Dream Day. I'll do the best I can to hold the pictures straight so you can see them because there are some really cool pictures in this book. They are all real life pictures that were taken around the time or the events that are spoken about in this book. Okay. There you go. Okay. Martin Luther King Jr. was nervous. He had been up all night writing what would become the most famous speech of his life. Now, standing at the foot of the Lincoln Memorial, he was about to address 250,000 people. He had never seen that many people gathered in one place before. Men, women, and children were standing row upon row for blocks around him. And for 1 full minute, he could not say a word because their applause filled the sky. They were cheering the messenger of their most cherished dreams. Martin Luther King Jr. believed in equality for everyone, not just a few. He wanted all people to have the full rights of citizenship. That meant the right to vote, to go to school, and to get a job. In the 1960s, African Americans did not have these basic rights. They could not eat in certain restaurants, go to certain schools, stay in certain hotels, or shop in certain stores. Martin wanted to change all that, and he dedicated his life to making that change happen. As a minister, he preached that equality was a God-given right, that everyone, blacks and whites, deserved to be treated with the same dignity and respect. He also believed in nonviolence, so he made his demands for equality in a peaceful way. He tried to bring attention to the plight of African American people by leading marches, sit-ins, and boycotts across the South. Okay, your first question that you will need to answer on your entrance ticket is in these 2 pages, or as I read these 2 pages, it talks about Martin Luther King believing that all people should have the full rights of citizenship, and then a few examples were given. Your first question is, what is one of those full rights of citizenship that Martin Luther King felt all people should have? So that is your first question, and I'll review the 2 questions you have to answer at the end. But his efforts for change were not enough. He knew he needed something more to make his dream come true. He decided to go to Washington, D.C. to talk to the President of the United States about equal rights. "The time has come, Mr. President," Martin wrote to John F. Kennedy, "to let those dawn-like rays of freedom fill the heavens with the noonday sunlight of complete human dignity." Martin made many trips to the White House with other civil rights leaders. They tried to persuade the president to propose a law that would give Black people the same rights as white people. After months of meetings and many weeks of telephone calls and telegrams, President Kennedy finally agreed. He, too, believed in Martin's dream. So I'll show you the picture up close. You can actually see John F. Kennedy there. Pretty cool. President Kennedy addressed the nation on television the night before he sent his civil rights bill to Congress. "We are confronted primarily with a moral issue," he said. "It is as old as the scriptures and is as clear as the American Constitution. If an American, because his skin is dark, cannot eat lunch in a restaurant open to the public, if he cannot send his children to the best public school available, if he cannot vote for the public officials who will represent him, then who among us would be content to have the color of his skin changed and stand in his place?" Sadly, not everyone believed in civil rights. The president's words angered those who did not want equality. Racists reacted with ugly violence. They beat up civil rights workers, they torched churches and bombed schools, they even killed a follower of Martin Luther King Jr. Yet, Congress did nothing. But Martin did not give up. He blew the trumpet of hope with stirring speeches. He pumped courage into those who were afraid. He proclaimed his belief in the goodwill of America. He insisted that what he called the Bank of Justice was not bankrupt, that it was full enough to give everyone a golden opportunity. How could Martin show the lawmakers in Congress just how many people in America shared his hope for a better life? He decided that a mass protest march on Washington, D.C. was the best way to make senators and representatives pay attention. Like a general, Martin summoned troops. First, he called upon the major groups who had been fighting long and hard for civil rights, groups like the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the Congress of Racial Equality, and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Then he reached out to churches, synagogues, and mosques because he wanted all religions to be represented. He called upon Catholics and Jews, Protestants and Muslims to gather at the foot of the Lincoln Memorial on August 28, 1963. Martin chose the Washington Mall's magnificent white marble statue of Abraham Lincoln as their meeting place because Lincoln, known as the Great Emancipator, had abolished slavery. His Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 had declared freedom for 3.1 million slaves. 100 years later, Martin yearned to free the 19 million descendants of those slaves. So you can see the picture of the individuals gathered there, the bottom of the monument. People all across the country responded to his call. They made plans to come to Washington on planes, trains, trucks, trailers, cars, buses, and bicycles. One man even roller skated from Chicago. Movie stars and musicians from Hollywood joined writers, poets, and artists. Parents brought children, teachers brought students, farmers, firemen, policemen, secretaries, doctors, lawyers, plumbers, all came to Washington to tell Congress to pass the law that would give everyone the same rights. So you can see some of the pictures here of the numbers of people that had gathered to march. In solidarity, people in other countries around the world declared the intention to march on August 28th in places like Berlin, Munich, Amsterdam, London, Oslo, Madrid, The Hague, Tel Aviv, Cairo, Toronto, and Kingston, Jamaica. The march took place on a Wednesday, but people dressed as if for Sunday church. Their purpose was serious, so their clothes were proper. Women wore hats and high heels. Men wore white shirts and ties and fanned themselves with straw snap brims. Okay, your second question that you need to answer for your entrance ticket is the march did not take place on a Sunday. What day did the march take place on? And why did people dress in their Sunday best? So it's a two-part question. The march did not take place on a Sunday. What day did it take place on? And why did people wear their Sunday best? The month of August steams with humidity in Washington, D.C., but the heat did not stop hundreds of thousands of people from coming to the march. It was the largest assembly ever gathered at the feet of Lincoln, and the gathering was joyful. People sat 20 deep around the reflecting pool where they dangled their feet in the water. The famous singer Marian Anderson was supposed to open the program with the Star-Spangled Banner, but she could not make her way through the crush of people. So Camilla Williams, the first Black woman to have a role with the New York City Opera, sang it instead. Soon, soaring music turned the mall into an open-air cathedral and filled the skies with song. After an afternoon of powerful speeches and solemn singing, the most magnificent moment of the day came at the end of the program when Martin Luther King Jr. appeared on stage. Applause rolled across the mall like claps of thunder as the 34-year-old preacher walked to the microphone. Women waved lace hankies and men stomped and cheered. Everyone expected something spectacular from this man, the most exciting speaker of his time. He had traveled 275,000 miles that year and given 350 speeches, trying to make America understand the desperation of its Black citizens, but this audience was his biggest ever. His message would resound for years to come. As you can see a picture of the number of people gathered there. Martin began by addressing the long struggle, the terrible nights of jail and injustice. He talked about the trials and tragedies African Americans had endured, but he did not dwell on those wrongs. Instead, he urged his people not to be bitter, not to hate, not to seek revenge. Inspired by his words, the crowd roared its admiration. They fell quiet only when he paused for a moment. In that moment, Mahalia Jackson, a famous gospel singer, shouted, "Tell them about the dream, Martin, the dream." That's when Martin Luther King Jr. put aside his prepared speech. Like a bird bursting from its cage, he took flight.